Hello, everyone, and my thanks to Soren for inviting me to present here at Wisdom 2.0. When Soren originally reached out to me, he thought it might be interesting for there to be a panel that I could participate in that would talk about what's working and what's not working when it comes to digital subscriptions and online courses and online summits, which is a big part of the focus that Sounds True has been working on for the past 5 or so years online. And I thought that was a semi-interesting idea. And I said, yeah, I could do that. But what's really alive for me, and as soon as I said that, I knew Soren would listen, and he did, because I know he cares about what's actually really alive in people and bringing that out and letting that lead the way. So I said, what's really alive in me is this focus that we've had at Sounds True, really, I would say, for the past decade or so, which is the workplace as a crucible for human development. What does it mean to grow as people, to grow our platform of awareness and consciousness so that we can connect with each other and relate with each other in a different way, in an honest and honorable and truth-telling and heartful and grounded way with good boundaries and a very high level of generativity. Now, as I say all those words, relating with a lot of heart and good boundaries and generativity, you might think that sounds a lot like intimate relationships. And one of the things that I've really been exploring, and part of what I want to share and talk about today, is this link that I found in my own life between focusing on what really makes an intimate partnership thrive and what makes relationships at work thrive, and how, in my experience, it's many of the same skills, actually, and that they're highly transferable. There's a gentleman who does a lot of couples counseling and education. His name's David Snarch, and he's written a book called Passionate Marriage, and he talks about how a committed relationship is a people-growing machine. And in my experience, a business, if it's really doing its job internally, is also a people-growing machine. Everybody's growing. And what I mean by that is there's a commitment to, you can say it in really simple language, looking at our shit and owning it, take it a bit further, and taking responsibility for working it out so that our relationships can be cleaner and more generative and more beneficial for others. Now, I call this, at business, the relationship bottom line. And one thing I just want to say as a side comment that I think is so interesting, for those of you who have been in the Wisdom 2.0 audience since this morning began, you've heard a lot of talk about relationships. Huh, who knew? I didn't know. I had no idea when I mentioned to Soren that I wanted to talk about the relationship bottom line and that this was what was really alive for me. I had no idea. And I think what I can take from that is that this is actually, you could say, an emergent right now that is starting to be articulated, which is how important it is that our mindfulness and awareness practice doesn't stay on the cushion or doesn't stay solitary. Yes, that is so important, and may that wake us up to our hearts and what's happening inside of us so that we actually make commitments to connect differently with each other. That's, I think, this new wave emergence that we're seeing and that we see right here in this morning block of time at Wisdom 2.0. So I'm calling this the relationship bottom line, and the reason for that is I think that often when something is seen and understood as being instrumental to the success of a business, oh, good relationships will create better teamwork Yes, check. If teams work better together, if there's more trust, if there's more mutual respect and just more mutuality, better listening, businesses will be more efficient. Yes, check. And then they'll make more money. Yes, check. Okay, let's teach everybody about relationships. And it becomes instrumental instead of being its own bottom line. And the reason why I wanted to emphasize this idea of a bottom line is that I notice that I'm sympathetic to that idea and slightly offended. And the part of me that's slightly offended is, when did something central, Dan Siegel talked about it this morning, the need we have as human beings to belong, to feel loved. When did something like that have to become instrumental to making money? Why can't it just be an end in itself? We get together every day and we work with each other, and we want to be decent and loving, and we manage our businesses with that as a bottom line, as an end in itself. Could that be enough? And by the way, it also will make your business more efficient and more profitable. Yay. So that's why I wanted to call it the relationship bottom line. And in preparing to talk about this, I tried to boil it down to 5 key ideas that are really, I think, the skills of building healthy relationship in the workplace. I'd also like to share with you, right before I do, just how this became supremely apparent to me that my mindfulness practice wasn't enough. And I'll just be brief here. 2 quick stories. One is that after being a meditator for 15 plus years and entering a new relationship about 15 years ago with a woman who's now my wife, Julie, after about 2 years into our relationship, she said, you know, I think this year you'll be on meditation retreats about 8 weeks of the year. You're going on a month-long retreat, you're going on a 2-week solitary retreat, you're teaching meditation for 2 weeks. I'm wondering, like, what about you and me? Like, does that happen ever? And I realized that I was actually terrified. I was terrified of that. The idea of going on a solitary retreat, not talking to anybody, I knew how to do that. And it actually became apparent to me that there was something avoidant in my meditation life, and that the work of relationship and the personal growth that would come with relationship, for me, was more threatening than anything else I could face. And that's how I knew I had to do it. And I checked myself into working intensively with a therapist, and I'll tell you that work is continuing. It's continuing. It's deep work. The other indicator to me that my mindfulness practice, my meditation practice, my solitary practice wasn't enough is that a coach came to Sounds True and started working with me. And he said, you know, Tami, you embody half of what it takes to make a good leader. And I was like, how about 51%? And he's like, you're really great on the vision side and inspiring people and articulating what's possible and where the business is going. But you're really kind of vacant on the relatedness side. You know, there's only about 100 people who work here, and many people have reported to me that you don't even know their names, even people who have worked here for 4 or 5 years. And that sometimes in the hall, you're so focused on what you're doing that you just walk right by people and you don't even smile. And sometimes there'll be all company gatherings and you'll stay up in your office and keep working on the phone. You've created this incredible business where people connect with each other and you're not part of it. And I knew that what he was saying was true and that this was also terrifying. And I was like, I have got to go where the terror is. To Dick Schwartz's point this morning about this part of us that we're afraid of, I knew that this was a critical part of my development and growth. And I have to say, as I've focused on it, I've become such a happier person. I feel so much more connected and so much more that sense of belonging. Okay, so how do we bring that in to a workplace environment? I'm going to give you 5 ways that we're doing it at Sounds True. The first one is this idea of supporting, encouraging, and demonstrating being vulnerable with each other. And that's a word that people have heard a lot. I want to tell you what it actually means to me. What it means to me is, first of all, knowing what I'm feeling in any given moment. Because just sort of like opening the veil to what one's thinking, that's not really vulnerability. That's a strange window into a very strange world. Being vulnerable is something different for me. It means right in this moment, I'm feeling a sense of whatever it is. And you have to know your feelings. And to know your feelings, you have to be able to tap in to a felt sense of what's happening with you in the moment, and have that inner language, that literacy of that flutteriness in my stomach, that clenching of my hands, that tension in my back, that crack and ache in my heart. Knowing that inner language and then being able to give voice to it, to me, is what it means to be vulnerable. And there's a courage in that, and the courage is to speak what's actually there, and a humility as well. For me, I know it takes a certain kind of humility when, as a leader, I say, I'm really scared. I don't know about what we should do in this situation. But as a leader, I think when you can set the modeling of being vulnerable, it changes everything in the room. In fact, whenever anybody in the room is vulnerable and their vulnerability is met and welcomed, it changes everything in the room. Eileen talked about how at Eileen Fisher they have check-ins where people talk about how they're feeling at the beginning of a meeting. And I know we do that at Sounds True too. And one of the things I've noticed is that you can have a check-in that's very surface. It's a very surface level check-in. Hi, I'm really busy, a lot going on, great, here I am. That doesn't change anything. Are we really checking in? We're just kind of saying, hi, I'm here, great, blah, blah, blah. When one person in the room checks deeply inside and has the courage to share what's actually happening for them, it changes everything. It's contagious. Vulnerability is contagious. And it's the key to trust. You're not going to have a team that trusts each other without building that trust on shared vulnerability. That's how we create trust. We take the risk. We take the risk of sharing ourselves, and we receive other people. So that's the first idea of how we build healthy relationships. And of course, you know this in your intimate relationships too. I mean, you have to be vulnerable. That's where it starts. You have to have the real story shared and on the table. The second idea that can pervade a culture and that is pervading the culture of Sounds True is being able to work out our conflicts directly with each other instead of being avoidant, instead of taking a conflict and talking about it to all the people who can't actually solve the conflict, which is the person you have a conflict with. And this is a tremendous skill set for us to develop. In terms of human development, having a healthy way of dealing with conflict, I think, is a very high level of accomplishment. People who can do this. People who can come, sit down straight with you and say, I'm feeling really frustrated about this, and I want to talk to you directly about it. I'm not sure I understood what you said, but I noticed I felt hurt. Can we clarify that? And we've had quite a bit of training at Sounds True on how we have difficult conversations with each other. And I think it's an incredibly important training. And if mindfulness and awareness of what we're feeling is sort of a base camp, then we can build on that, this capacity to have difficult conversations. And obviously in the workplace, there are so many difficult conversations that we need to have. There are so many missed cues, strange emails, confusion and disappointment of all kinds. And it takes tremendous cleanness as a person to go direct to the person and work out your shit. Work out, I've got that word in now, I think 3 times. I don't think I've ever done that in a presentation before. But then again, I've never given a presentation on healthy relationships at work. And relationships are inherently messy. They are. That's where we get to discover our mess. I didn't discover my mess on the meditation cushion, I have to tell you. I met some fears, And then I went into open space and I loved it. My mess was when my wife looked at me and said, "Why didn't you do this thing you said you were going to do?" Oh my God, really, just that. Off. Whew, why didn't I do this thing? Okay, that's where the mess is. And that's where the mess is at work. This trainer who has come into Sounds True to help us, his name is Veda, and he taught us a process that we now call doing the Veda. It's a very simple process. Let's do the Veda. Here's how I'm feeling when you have a difficult conversation. Here's what I need, and then asking the other person, what do you need? Here's what I need, what do you need? And then the other person can say, here's how I'm feeling in response to everything you just said. Here's what I need, what do you need? Another skill of healthy relationships is the willingness to do the repair work that's necessary when we have to repair. And of course, we know this also in our intimate relationships, and we know this in our relationships at work. There's a level where things break down. Can I go back to the person and say, I want to apologize. I want to apologize for what I said. I want to apologize for that email I wrote that wasn't clear. Or a different version of repair, I want to check in. It seems like in that meeting we misunderstood each other. Can we talk about that? And the other aspect, the other half to apologizing is receiving an apology. This is what I noticed was something that was really hard for me. Someone would apologize to me and I'd say, yeah, I forgive you. And inside I said, I'll never forgive that person for what they just did. That's a problem. That was a problem for me. That was a problem. And it's been hard for me to let stuff go. I don't like letting, if somebody did something, no way. Even if they apologized and even if they meant it, I will always remember it. Well, that's not going to help our culture move into the kind of love and generativity that I'm looking for. So I've had to learn to really let go and really let people grow as I want to grow. Fourth idea is this idea of being open to feedback. This is a point that Eileen made too. And even more than being open to feedback, seeking it, wanting it, being hungry for it. Because that's part, I think, of being dedicated to personal growth at work, is you want to know what you don't know, what's in your shadow, what you can't see, that everybody else can see. Obviously, they're all talking about it and they can see it. Go ahead and just lay it out for me. Tell me, give me the feedback. And there are lots of ways you can build being hungry for feedback into an organization. At Sounds True, we have upward reviews along with an employee review, and the upward review is as important. And the person who's receiving the upward review gathers all of that information, shares it back with their team, as well as sharing it to their manager. We do an anonymous all-company survey, so people can say what's really on their mind for people who aren't yet ready to necessarily say it direct to somebody who's higher up in the organization. Each year for the last 6 years, we've been taking this information from the anonymous survey, reading it so carefully, and learning what the people at Sounds True have to say about management practices, the leadership team, et cetera, and it's changed us. Each year we've responded and gotten better, and our scores as a business have gone up. Then the fifth point I want to make about having the skills of healthy relationships at work is actually holding this up, this idea of personal growth, which I think is a requirement for a healthy relationship. I think all of us could agree, anybody who's been in a long-term relationship could agree, personal growth is a requirement. Making personal growth a value in the culture, articulating that, saying that's what we do here. That's part of what we do. In addition to the products, in addition to how we treat our customers, what we do as a group of humans is we help each other grow. We're committed to it. I'm committed to your growth, and I want you to be committed to mine. Let's do this together. So for example, at the beginning of the year, this year, we asked everybody at Sounds True to break up into small groups and talk about how they felt their own personal growth related to the business's growth. Did they see a connection? And what was that connection? And then to create a goal, a personal growth goal, and to write it down, put it on a note card, stick it on their computer, and that was their goal for the year, and to articulate to their small group what their goal was and how they saw it directly relating to the business. So making that link for people. In addition, we prioritize spending money on training and coaching to help us grow. Yes, to help us develop a mindfulness practice, but to help us have difficult conversations, to help us work with shadow issues that are emerging, that our team is pointing out to us. I mean, I found one-on-one coaching with that incredibly valuable. And I think as businesses commit to personal growth, what we're doing is we're committing to raising the platform of awareness in which we operate as people, not just as solo mindfulness meditators, but as people in our families, as parents, as members of our workplace, and then members of our community, and then ultimately as citizens and as people who can solve problems and work across differences, people who know how to have strong boundaries, talk about intense emotions with clarity, and be incredibly loving and generative. I actually think we can allow our businesses to be this crucible for what will become a type of relational, wise human being that can make changes on all scales in the world. And that, to me, is really working on the relationship bottom line. So thank you all. Good boundaries and generativity, you might think that sounds a lot like intimate relationships. And one of the things that I've really been exploring, and part of what I want to share and talk about today, is this link that I found in my own life between focusing on what really makes an intimate partnership thrive and what makes courses and online summits, which is a big part of the focus that Sounds True has been working on for the past 5 or so years online. And I thought that was a semi-interesting idea. And I said, yeah, I could do that. But what's really alive for me, and as soon as I said that, I knew Soren would listen, and he did, because I know he cares about what's actually really alive in people and bringing that out and letting that lead the way. So I said, what's really alive in me is this focus that we've had at Sounds True, really, I would say, for the past decade or so, which is the workplace as a crucible for human development. What does it mean to grow as people, to grow our platform of awareness and Hello, everyone, and my thanks to Soren for inviting me to present here at Wisdom 2.0. When Soren originally reached out to me, he thought it might be interesting for there to be a panel that I could participate in that would talk about what's working and what's not working when it comes to digital subscriptions and online consciousness, so that we can connect with each other and relate with each other in a different way, in an honest and honorable and truth-telling and heartful and grounded way, with good boundaries and a very high level of generativity. Now, as I say all those words, relating with a lot of heart and